When steel talks, everybody listens.
That's the sound of pan, all right. To the trained ear, it is not the sound of an ordinary steel drum. In this 1967 recording of Chopin's Romance in E minor, the music of the amplified pan flows from the heart of Bertie Marshall, who was born in Port of Spain, Trinidad, the birthplace of the steel pan, during the instrument's gestation period in the turbulent 30s, who was weaned on its early development in the 50s, an era that marked the tuning success of pioneers Neville Jules, Eddie Manette, Winston Spree Simon, and Anthony Williams, and who pounded out his own turf while experimenting with this new culture in the anti-establishment 60s. Today, Marshall celebrates 33 years as a tuner for Desperados, one of the leading steel bands in Trinidad and Tobago. If art is about dreaming and about suffering the pain that shadows creativity, then Yesteryear is the story of Bertie Marshall, a former welder and a man of steel who once dreamed of perfecting steely notes and rearranging the pecking order through the science of metal and music in the ribald and violent subculture of steel band rivalry. He would achieve such fame with the Highlanders Steel Orchestra, which was sponsored by Forsyth, a Canadian shirt maker. It is a story of the romance between Marshall and his craft, warts and all, and about the vagaries of an ordinary man whose art has rendered him larger than life. Marshall, a recluse, sat out his 67th birthday party friends organized in February 2003. That attitude may have been drawn from his early childhood, which he lived in the underbelly of the poor in the John area, where today the old is grudgingly giving way to the new. He then relocated to Success Village in Laventille. He attended Tranquility Government Intermediate School, but chose to graduate in his study of the pan. By age 18, Marshall was already tuning the drum.
Trinidad is extremely fortunate to have such a gifted person in the name of Bertie Marshall.
I think when Bertie Marshall came on board, we now had a musical instrument. There was a difference.
Some 50 years later, the reunion of Highlanders players would gather Carnival Sunday at the band's old panyard at the corner of Erica Street and Old St. Joseph Road. This is where Marshall's home, then known in Laventille as the House of Music, once stood. It is where Marshall and his former wife, Annabelle Marshall, reared their children Claude and Claudine. Entertainment specialist Terry Joseph, in an enterprising move, would encourage steel bands in Port of Spain to play music popularized by Marshall's Highlanders Band during the 60s at a tribute to Bertie Marshall, a bomb competition held in his honor. The practice of dropping a bomb or piece of classical music on rival steel bands introduced fierce musical battles on Juve morning. It was orchestrated by Trinidad All-Stars in the early 1950s. Highlanders would redefine this mission by fine-tuning its drums and amplifying its lead pan to augment its calypso-driven bebop style. The playlist was heavy on the classics, but it also included ballads and religious songs. However, hamstrung by the intensity of panorama and other pan competitions during the carnival, participants in the Marshall tribute chose to venerate the man by playing songs of praise and romance.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we've got band number 2 in this special Bertie Marshall Highlanders Juve contest.
Marshall, who had cut his teeth as a leader of small bands such as Armed Forces in the 1950s, widened his experiments after he put together a larger band in 1962. He had dusted off the shingle of the defunct Highlanders, an East Dry River band captained by Kim Loy Wong, and dazzled the golden era of Pan with his own bright new sound and distinctive style of phrasing. By dint of his conscientious work in the heat and frustration of tuning oil drums without financial aid, Marshall hammered out innovation after innovation. The method of tuning through harmonics, the high tenor, the double tenor, true amplification of pans, and in collaboration with Desperado's leader Rudolph Charles in the 1970s, the quadraphonic pans. Most captivating of all was the invention of the bird phone, amplified double tenors that sustained sound and put a damper on it. Marshall was also the first to shelter his instruments during Carnival with canopies.
The pans, they were so fine-tuned that the heat would make you hear the metal going flang, flang, and put the pans out the tea and Bertie. They devised the idea. First again, first always with innovation, Bertie decided cover the pans. And we invented the canopy. And this canopy that you see now, institutionalized, it came again from there.
Marshall was a pioneer for sure. Who is Bertie Marshall? The tuner who finds extracurricular pleasure by listening to classical music and watching the Flintstones on television.
Here is a man who, with a basic knowledge of electronics, an accomplished harmonica player, who combined these skills and addressed Pan, which the one must understand that Bertie Marshall, who had just crossed 67, this is at age 10. He had his first experience, found an old, or got an old, I should say, Tokyo tenor pan from the band Tokyo, and decided to tune the pan again, to refashion it. And in working on it, got a number of ideas about how pan should really sound. Remember now, he's a harmonica player, so he understands the combination of notes that will most easily give you chords and that kind of thing. He comes up with a pan in which when you hit the D note, you also have a spot in it in which you get an A and an F sharp. So while the D note is dominant there, you in fact have the harmonics going. It's an extraordinary piece of work, and anyone who's ever played a pan will tell you that that particular leap is perhaps the most responsible, if not singularly so, for the sound of today's steel orchestras. That is Bertie Marshall in the thumbnail portrait.
Bertie Marshall is one of the greatest pan tuners and one of the greatest inventors for the instrument. And to me, they say this one better than that one, and there's only Trinidad and Tobago, I think, have something called the Better Than Band, because everybody claims that this one better than that one and that one better, but it's whatever contribution that person make towards the creation and the advancement of this instrument, because no one man can do it, you know. Everybody claim, well, this was P. Simon, and this was Ellie Manet, and this is Bertie Marshall, and this is Lincoln Newell, which is a great man.
The relationship between the two of us goes to the time when he was just, she was showing that kind of genius mind way back when, experimenting with things like crystal radio and you know, projectors and all kinds of stuff. So you saw where this guy was sharp, and that when he got in the pan, you knew it would be no different, that he would be a trailblazer. I had no doubt in my mind about that. And once he did start, the quality of the instruments, you know, told you that immediately, that there was a guy cutting his own path. The thing is that we meshed, he and I, because he, like me, had an interest in jazz.
My family lived at Upper Erica Street, so on my way to lunch I had to pass the Panyard. I saw Bertie, he saw me, and the rest is history. I was not that interested in what he did with the pan as with the man. Because I would go there and he would be doing things with the pan, but I was not aware of much of what he was doing. When you live with somebody like Bertie, Bertie to me now is a genius. When you live with somebody so you don't recognize their talents, what happens, it becomes as should I say an annoyance, if that is a kind word. It is much more of an annoyance because there he is, every cent is going into this thing. He spends all his time with the pan, not much time with me, but it's after you leave. And you know, when I recognized Bertie's talent, I had been to Brooklyn with Edgar Fitzgerald Spots, his wife Anne, and we did a tour of Panyards. And when I saw the respect that they had for Bertie, that awe, that reverence, it was then I realized Bertie's talent. What I took for granted was, I mean, he was really, really good. He's the quintessential pan man. Bertie to me does not show much emotion. The most emotion I've seen is with his daughter Claudine, because Claudine is so much like him. It is the closest I've seen him where you get a little expression. You see inside him. Claude is 37, Claudine is 36. 36 years, and we have 3 grandchildren.
I was one of the students in Highlanders, and he's my mentor. Where music and pan is concerned, he's very dear to me. And I respect him very much. I love and respect him very much. He has taught me a lot. A lot of bands use a lot of rolling in their music too, and we use, you know, like staccatos. And the phrasing is like, you know, jazzy, so to speak. You know, like offbeat, you know.
You would say that music's supposed to be a conversation of the instruments. And I like that, you know. I base my music on that from him, you know.
Bertie is the only genius I've met in the flesh in all my years. Secondly, what is now being discovered is that Bertie was special in the sense that he was has been a genuine scientist. Scientist in the sense of understanding that there's something called a scientific method that you have to proceed with in order to make scientific discovery and expansion.
Welcome our boys to the Bertie Marshall Highlanders Juvenile Contest, playing Hold Me Close tonight.
But then they telling me about pan sweet. They used to say Invaders pan sweet, or Scout pan sweet, this pan sweet. I say all them pan in tune properly. So they call me Dr. No. And I used to be playing my harmonica and trying to get the same thing on my harmonica on the pan, which is the tones and the overtones I hear. I realized, well, I have to stick it up. Stick the note with it now, in order to get it. Put it here and put it there. And I realized I get it from the fundamental, all the harmonics and them, and send. Well, obviously, it startled me a little bit. So try next one. Same thing. Try next one, well. There was it. The harmonics was born. And a lot of bands condemn it. See the pan ringing too much, or this ringing too much, or this quality song bad. And I mean, listen to people because, you know, I like a Hitler. I feel like I'm on the right track. And besides that, my ears was telling me, yes. And then I see all tuners come, my friend. And all of them want to learn. Everybody want to understand. Because they hear it and they understand it. It's simply the octave of the fifth or the octave of the third. When people say about ring and thing, it's really the octave you're hearing. You get it? You'll get that. If you don't put that, it won't come so. Now I find some tuners now as they get in the harmonic. They squeeze the note so much that they lost the depth or the fundamental. Because you're fundamental wrong, you're not wrong, you know. Lincoln, everybody that learn harmonics learn it through me.
either direct or indirect.
The tenor is a different voice, and it's a lower range pan to the tenor pan, but the style, the pattern of it have a special song. You know, it's, I don't know, that tenor is more like a violin. You don't have a smooth, unique song. Don't care whoever tune the double tenor, it comes with a song because of the pattern where you place the notes. And a lot of fellas run from that pan, but that is what the sweetest pan to play, even the solo on. You mix a violin and a soprano sax together. You can imagine that song or a song together, where the tenor and the double tenor have that kind of song in their marriage.
His introduction of the double tenors really revolutionized pan. It definitely brought a new song, a brassy song to the steel orchestra. We use it to advantage, because I found it was almost like a utility pan, where you could play octaves to the first pan. You could also play harmony, which if you look at Silver Sash recordings in the early 60s, going into the 70s, there was always this rich harmony there. That was due to Bertie Marshall double tenors, you know. And plus, whenever the second pans took a solo, the double tenors soloed with them also. So it was a pan you could have shifted along as an arranger. It was great. I remember being a member of the National Steel Band in the early days, and when Bertie Marshall brought out these pans, I remember the Eddie Mannett and Invaders were tuning the pans for the National Steel Band, and they told them, well, we need some double tenors, and they just couldn't capture the tone. It was as strong as that, you know. In other words, the effect at the time was, well, we didn't invent the pan, so that pan really doesn't mean anything.
We have this insularity kind of thing that has been a bedrock part of steel band history, you know, in this country. And because you're from the West, you know, and somebody else from the East, or vice versa, you know, what you're doing is really, you know, not something that the people over so want to give, you know, credit for and so on.
Of course, if he wanted to design the perfect note, he had to be the perfect man, and that put some strain on his perfect band.
One of the most difficult things was to tell Bertie that he was good. He knew he was good, and he would remind me about it, right? That's a little personal joke we have about Bertie.
Bertie and brilliant guys, brilliant guys. Brilliant guys, they're not like us, the average Joe. Short-tempered, he's arrogant.
Could be. What do you mean? You find so?
You gotta know Bertie to go by Bertie. You can't come by Bertie. The Dr. Williams came by Bertie, asked me, he told Bertie, Doctor, go in the fridge and get your beer. Say, ain't got no servant here. This is what this man tell the doctor. So understand, this is how Bertie Marshall is, and this is him.
Some people may say he's a dictator, but to be Bertie's friend, you have to be what Bertie say. And that means that if you project an idea, he don't need negative vibes. He don't like negative vibes.
He was a very moody fella. And I think as a pan tuner, hearing this noise or the constant pounding of the pan, a person could really be moody.
He would quarrel if you make a note too small. He would quarrel for the whole week if you make one note too small on a pan. He always believed in perfection. So through that now, it helped me along, you know. And I always follow the lines, you know, I try to learn his technique, his tuning, which is about the greatest technique.
As a little boy coming from college, I would stop off at Bertie's house on my bicycle on an afternoon and meet serious discussion about music, argument, bitter argument, which is the right chord, which is the best chord, which is the most progressive phrase, and so on. I remember him, when we were doing a tune, we would call Ken Fortune, and Ken Fortune will be given the instruction, take the high tenor, the melody pan, but it wasn't the melody pan. This is another mistake people make. The melody pan was really the double tenor. If you listen to the early recordings of Highlanders, and you give Ken Fortune the choice, and go and bring the harmony, and you come back in 2 days with perfect harmony. Now I am saying all of these things that were happening behind the scenes, few people know about. In other words, the sound of Highlanders is something that was taken seriously by the people who created it.
I guess he was trying to develop a whole amplified band, you know, like a stage side. So you have the tenors amplified, the double tenor amplified. I think he tried amplifying the second pan too. And the bass used to sound nice. So I sat there and I listened to him, and he was going good. He had plenty problems with it, you know. I mean, when I find it sounding real good and real nice, he finds it's not sounding good enough, so he'll go again and he'll work and work through the night. Sometimes I'll leave him there and just go home. And he's there working, you know, trying to perfect his songs. He was always into it. Bertie was always looking for something. And to me, he was looking for something good. It's something that you cannot see. It's something that you feel. It's an inspiration.
He made acoustical chambers under all the bases, one box for two on this side, one for two on that side, one for two in front. There were holes underneath, and they would go in holes at the side, and I am standing then on a box that has 3 microphones in it, collecting the song from all around.
I realized at an early stage that if an audience can't hear you displaying or playing or whatever, it's your fault. And it's not the audience's fault. It's as simple as that. Oh, well, the mic goes on the pan. I use a true voice mic, a true voice thing that changes the vibrations into sound.
I made a mistake practicing in the yard, and Bertie told me, don't make no mistake on the span. I said, well, you know, I play over 1,000 notes in the night. If I make one mistake, what is that? And Bertie said to me, look, don't make no mistake, because if a doctor make a mistake, is a man dead?
And we played Walker. And we had the one tenor band. Franklin them could play that. The tenor was overpowering the double tenor. So he had us to increase the double tenor. You know what double tenor we had us to end up? You going to match that tenor band, 30 double tenors. 30 double tenors. And after that, Juve morning, you see the amount of double tenors swinging. You see now that next thing bring one double tenor, you amplify it.
Yeah, they call it child music. Lack of understanding. First of all, with the first band, I think, just from vaguely, that I hear, the tone of the pans and things sung like that. Other than that was the only one that was sung in that way. So when people don't understand something, they call it all kind of thing, you know.
A member of the band died from a ruptured appendix, and I think that tune they played for him, May the good Lord bless and keep you. And that tune stuck in my mind all the time. I can't remember, he lived up the street, but they played that in Woodford Square.
The bounce. First is picking at the tune, choice of tune.
I love them all. There was excitement in those music. And the next nice thing about it too, they were all in different keys. So it had my mind, you know, ticking, so to speak.
It was on the upper force. The importance of that was everybody was shell-shocked in Port of Spain. You passed by All Stars, and people were just there, you know, what is this? Where does this come from? Something completely new in tone, in phrasing, in musicality, and in instrumentation. It was new.
I had done that tune. I remember we even stormed the Trinidad All-Stars Bastion that year, police headquarters, on the Tuesday night, and I remember hearing a fella talking after the carnival, says, All-Stars man, obviously, saying, boy, I going down there to see my, you know, get my usual Tuesday night thing with All-Stars. And some little band come through, boy, they take everybody. I said, that was no little band, that was we, that was Highlanders, you know.
Then 64 was Gypsy Rondo, the great Gypsy Rondo. And what was significant in Gypsy Rondo to me was it was a more expansive melody. It was a melody that was more sophisticated and more challenging. And I mean, in those days, you know, steel band still ruled the Fed, and that was the Fed tune in that era.
Every valley shall be exalted, shall be exalted.
The next year, of course, was the famous Let Every Valley Be Exalted, 1965.
To hear the players tell it, they had borrowed music from God's soul and passed it along to the crowds lining the parade route as manna from heaven. If one could put animation to Marshall's 1965 version of Handel's Every Valley Shall Be Exalted, one needs to look no further than the collage of interpretations and experiences offered by those people who were close to the band and the amplification of its music.
Myself and Tony Slater was lining, and the barman, Stuloki Maharaj, tell me, look at record here, Bertie. I say, who? He said, a fella like he needs a record. Go and play it now if you want. When I read through it, I see that tunes and things from the Messiah. It's from every Valley tune. So when I put on the record, I tell Tony, I say, Tony, I go know that tune, you know. And fella say, but hear the bad, you can't go in chung with that tune. That tune is a godly tune. I say, oh, we godly tune that are coming with this thing. I say, it's good music. And I say, I go in with it. But you know, me and my Hitler thing. Me listening to them and this stupid. I'm glad I get a tune man ready made for pan. What? So I come down with it, so couldn't beat me.
Coming down between Frederick Street. Frederick Street, well, Edward and them do, but Frederick Street mostly, Park Street also. A certain part of Park between Frederick and St. Vincent Edward. They had a couple of buildings there on that side. So if we happen to go down get the song, I mean, it's like going through a valley.
The bass was like boom, 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 boom. You could have danced the bass alone. You didn't bound for any other instrument. They just listened to the bass alone. The bass at them, you know what I mean? And the first time was an opportunity for them to play counterpoint music. Because most music, there's only counterpoint on a part or thing, but that whole tune is counterpoint.
Now the band is in the distance. I think, if I remember, the tenors were elevated. And but you're hearing this sound coming on, you know it's amplified because, I mean, the natural sound is not going to carry that far. And everybody just stood there and, oh, you know what I mean? Every valley shall be exalted. I would never forget that.
We coming down Park Street, boom! In front of the judges, that is down Frederick, in front of the, what we call it, Town Hall, that's where the judging taking place. Casablanca and Tokyo going at it, tooth and nail. And we are Park Street. People start running. So one of our guys, he turned the band so, head back up Charlotte Street. A guy named Boboy Dice. That time I was still a kid, you know. He spin the pan back so, boom! Say we going down in front of the judges. But we scared now because they're ratting. Deuce from Casablanca run so, bang! Right by the pan where you know him. Talk, he say, boy, and he leave and he go on. And Boboy Dice turned the band around again. He said, we go into the competition. This is how we end up winning the valley. We could have missed history.
You had to listen. You were compelled to listen. You couldn't comment.
I was particularly moved by a friend of mine, her mother. And she came to me Juve morning and she was long tears in her eyes. She just couldn't believe the beauty of what she was seeing. Of course, what the valley did was raise pan to a certain level of sophistication. Okay? And because the tone now was very different, the tone now was more controlled, able to control that tone. And it gave a completely new sound, you know. So it was the impact of the Valley. Of course, one would remember that was the tune that stayed on the top 10 parade of hits for the longest of any steel band in history.
And we cut across in front of the church. It so happened Sewell was out there, you know, and we playing the Valley, it being a church tune, you know. He approached the guys to question, wait guys, could we have this band come to play in church for us? And a few of the guys get around and say, well, yeah, it's possible. We could communicate and get together. And give him the distinction, and is there as the first band that went and accompanied a choir in the church.
It was Christmas time, remember, so they were able to put in some other things, not, most interestingly, God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen, you know, and then you had people saying, well, this is relevant, you know, this work.
Steel band men never carry the stigma anymore because they played in the church. We had this change of attitude towards the people and the fellows. And then we had girls now coming in to play pan. Then these girls hardly play pan. You're mad?
In 1967, Marshall, according to supporters and rivals too, bested himself by winning the bomb competition again, this time with an arrangement of Rossini's busy overture, The Italian Girl in Algiers. There is no known recording of this performance.
That tune brought out all the sections of the orchestra, And then you see all the different, it had so many movements in that tune, so many changes, and you know, it just highlighted every section of the orchestra in ways that was never done before. And the music just kept going and going and going as if it would never stop. And we take you from one mood to another mood to another mood to another mood. So I think that was the most complex and most beautiful of all the bombs.
In a sense, winning the bomb competition in 1965 and 1967 not only was a boon for the band's ego, but also a bane for its pride. Members recall that in '65, supporters of Fascinator Steel Orchestra of Port of Spain, and in '67, East Side Symphony from San Juan rained on Highlander's glorious parade by wreaking havoc on band members and instruments.
The clash in front of the hospital, really, it was not one, you know, it was two. We had two clashes on that same street, you know, Charlotte Street. Same two clashes. The first one, this had to do with the same element of Saga Boyism.
I was playing guitar pan. And when I do so, I see something red on my pan. I thought it was wine. It wasn't wine, it was blood.
The bottle is singing all color sodas, coming. Then next thing you know, the trap set in pieces, the pans in pieces. Me and Franklin, I take a height, and Franklin take a height, and Keith Smith grab something. We gone.
I remember I was in the band there, and a bunch of the fellas came around me and said, look, we had to protect Mr. Feroz. And they take a lot of licks. Any one of them last would have killed me. I'm so fragile. I'll never forget that. Never forget that.
A meeting was called the police, the powers that be, because they call us together to find out why. And you know, Carnival is not about that, rioting and things. So they call us together, you know, to discuss and make peace with us, you know. So I went up 19, 18, very young. And I gone between these guys, and we had to sit down and talk, and you know what I'm saying. But I wanted to find out why, you know, why. And it happened 2 years between the space of 3 years. Twice they mashed the band up.
Why?
Jealousy, envy. You know, the amplified pan for one, the majority of people had a problem with it.
It was more jealousy with the rival or the mass players. That jealousy wasn't really between the steel band man in that kind of form, in that kind of strong way. It was more, it start with somebody bang somebody girl, or somebody take somebody girl, or somebody looking for a girlfriend and inside Highlanders.
In 1968, the so-called Boboli Band had had enough. In a letter to a newspaper, Marshall said in part, "Our enemies have won and we now concede defeat. I understand that the fact that we were finalists in this year's Panorama and runners-up in the bomb competition is being held against us. Imagine, we have even incurred the wrath of certain steel bandsmen because we amplified our pans. Can't we be allowed to experiment? We have no badge-ons, only saga boys and saga girls. So the solution is obvious. Get out while the members of the band are still alive." Finally, I must thank our sponsors, Forsyth, and the people of Laventille, who have stuck with us all these years. However, the band caved in to public sentiment, then salvaged its pride with Marshall's invention of the bird phone in 1970 to 1971. He was searching for a way to extend and suppress notes at will. He found nirvana in the bird phone. History, logic, and experts say Marshall was ahead of his time by 2 decades or so.
Welcome, please, the Neil and Massey Trinidad All-Stars with their tribute to Bertie Marshall. The song is aptly titled, "How Great Thou Art."
The boat phone was meant as, let me say, one of the first tone control pan, because I was thinking about elongating the notes. But when you elongate notes, you must be able to control them when you want to cut off. Otherwise they become noisy, you know. You understand? And you see, because you can play a musical instrument and it can create noise because of the fact that I have this note. When you liven up this note and it die too quick, sometimes you can't get the effect you want. And if it elongates too much and hit the next note, that note becomes noisy as far as music is concerned. So the whole idea was to elongate the note, because if you check on in steel band, there are no instrument in a band that have control besides your hand. So I was thinking to get a more instrumental effect as ARNOLD is to control the note. Like this then. Strategical portions of the pan are put conductors and all come together so that they can convey the note, the song of the note. And then I have it go through a spring system. Whereas when you strike the pan, the spring vibrates. But the note might long there, but you'll hear it as long as I don't disengage or engage the apparatus I had below it.
Which was?
My pedal. Just like instruments that work with that, the vibraphone or the piano. You know, they have what they call it, a system. I did the whole thing. But particular pans, I was trying to introduce that to. I wasn't trying to do that to the whole band. I was trying to do that to certain pans so that it will reach the effect of the steel band. If you want to elongate, for instance, you mash the pedal head, so it disengage from the note. You understand? But it'll be going through all the time. But if you release it, it's going to stop. Because in truth and in fact, it's not the direct note alone. Remember, I have this spring, you know. It's a scientific business, in other words. Because when I reach a certain thing to get certain effects, I realize it's more than just be able to tune a pan. You understand what I mean? It's more than just a tune a pan. And then nobody I know was around to help me in that, because that was so technical. It was a puzzle to me. Every time I go there by his house, he always uncover that pan. He don't want nobody else to play, but come on, play the pan, come on, play the pan. You know, it's just all right. No, come play for me, play for me. Like when I play the pan. It was a nice song. I saw it got burned up in the fire because I think that was something could have improved on, because that's the way you're supposed to go. We have to go in this new age, this new era.
The boat phone to me was annoying at times, and I inside, you know, because I am there and this pan is in the living room. And Bertie spends every waking moment, you know, the notes were elongated. Is that the correct word? And then these fingers came up. So you got a piano effect. Now, if you are visiting and you are hearing it, there is no problem. But I lived with this thing 24 hours a day. So after a time, there's cotton wool in my ears, because what is he doing there with this thing? You know, in hindsight now, you realize that it was such a good thing. But at that time, I would be honest with you, it was a bit annoying.
Bertie made me to realize that how dangerous a fire really is. You say with water you could survive, you could pick up other things. You say, but with a fire, you got to start all over, there's nothing there again. There's no identity, nothing there. Everything gone.
For you to have a whole society not respond in some kind of human and humane way to that, and say, listen, man, we got to do something to make sure that the bird phone reappears. You know, I think that was a sad commentary on us as a people.
I think we always had it in mind to create an next boat phone. But Bertie will go back again to take all his little fun. That all his funds went into that instrument, you know. And right now I don't feel like he would do that to put in that amount of funds, you know. But if somebody had funded, nobody had never come back since after that boat phone and say, well, Bertie Marshall, let me fund you back for a boat phone. How much $1,000 you need to rebuild that same pan? Like they didn't want it.
I didn't finish it. It was a pan I was still experimenting on.
It took a couple of years of scratching and clawing his way back, but neither Marshall nor the band could refashion the lost chord, rebuild the fire in the note, refuel the sweet pain in the belly, rejoice even. In the end, the valley was exhausted.
Bertie didn't have Pops, Professor, Johnny's brothers, and all these guys anymore because they migrated. The Highlanders' idea, in a sense, was snuffed out by the fact that the people who were there to create that idea no longer were around.
I think the other thing we have to recognize is that the direction of Bertie was going, one has to look at today's electronic achievements in terms of other instruments like the guitar, the keyboard, and say, by now we would have had a true MIDI pan. Now, if we had gone to a MIDI pan, if that was possible today, the potential for this instrument would be limitless.
In recent years, Dr. Brian Copeland has been experimenting with the amplification of the steel pan at the University of the West Indies, the kind of faith that could be construed as a result of the pioneering efforts of Bertie Marshall.
We use multiple sensors on the instrument. These are non-contact pickups suspended from a very light frame of the instrument, and that basically allows us to pick up. Basically, all we're doing, just like Bertie Marshall did, was to pick up the vibrations of the instrument, turn that into electrical signal. You can amplify, you can process any way you want to.
Nobody puts money into the research of steel pan. This is why whatever has been achieved only on the pan itself as we know it. Whether it is Bertie has created the double tenor, or Anthony did his spider web, or whatever innovations that have come after that. Very few. You need to go beyond that. You need to go to new materials, you need to go to new techniques of making. You need to go, same bird phone, you need to explore that some more so that you could do whatever you want with the sound. Capture the sound electronically and play with it. It's the sound from a pan, it's not anything different. We all amplify sound, so we do things with it. We actually raise it and we lengthen it a bit. So doing more with it on an individual pan is what he was trying to do. And I think those kinds of things are what are going to advance in pan.
He was amplifying individual pans, okay? What we're trying to do is amplify the whole orchestra with minimalist miking, all right? And so you amplify, you mic the band and amplify it using power loudspeakers. And we envisage putting, say, a band of up to 30, 40 persons on a trailer and having these speakers, of course they'll be powered by a generator, having these speakers throughout the sound of the band. So we're not miking pans individually, but miking the whole space, right, the whole orchestra. So we're going to design it for one layer, a trailer, and we're going to put speakers at the back and at the sides. We'll have a generator, and we'll mic the band and throw the sound out. We did a demonstration, I think it was last year, at the Princess Building. We put the system up there and played music, you know, one afternoon, one day into afternoon into evening. It was very successful.
Marshall believes he's as close to fulfilling his old dream, though, as funds become available. Meanwhile, he continues to tune pans for Desperados over at the other Lavent Hill, where Panorama success is paramount, where Marshall is at home then, because since Marshall started tuning Desperados frontline pans in 1970, the band has won a record 9 titles and all 3 classical music festivals in which it participated.
I don't want to say Highlanders is the best band, but see the music, it make you have a different feeling inside. You're coming down the road playing Let Every Valley Be Exalted. I remember when I went to school on Ash Wednesday, fellas tell me to climb up on the lamppost to see if the whole band was whistling, right? You know, these are the kind of things that I remember. I remember coming from police headquarters, have schoolmates say, oh good, look, a fella beating 6 pan. That was Teddy Belgrave playing at 6 bass. A man saying, oh good, or you could see down on that pan, look how deep it is. That time Bertie used to sink his tenor pans 9 inches when everybody was 7 and 5, right? They had low tenor, Bertie had high tenors, right? So all this greatness and the feelings they had in those days, I don't think that could come back, and I don't want to exchange that for nothing but going to heaven.
Of course, the romance between Marshall and the instrument never has gone cold. Just as with true romantics in everyday life, it has simply endured the vicissitudes of love along the way. And always, it has carried a song in its heart. And yes, hope.
I never asked the government for no help, you know. Because the early days when I did ask Eric say, if I expect him to take the people's money and spend on these stupid steel bands. So I never forget that. I mean, I know secret. You understand? So I keep myself by myself. Because Rudolph had made an arrangement for me to meet the doc. And when I went and explained my position and the thing, the doc told me you can't do that. Take the people's money and spend on any stupid steel band. Exactly what he said.
The Bertie Marshall Foundation. Nothing. It is a small tribute to the man. Very small. The Bertie Marshall Foundation for the development of pan, steel band music.
Bertie, we praise you. Bertie, we thank you. For your bands, bring out all of the shine. Bertie, we love you. Yes, we adore you. The music make us jump up and whine. The world cherish you for the things you do. History record you as a rare fan. In times to come, when we beat the drum, we'll see a legend etched in our mind.
should be